Hey folks, welcome to the video. In OP07, Nami is a really good deck, but I guess I'm trying to play Nami perhaps as Bandai intended. I'm playing Nami with a 100% East Blue package. Kind of. There is one card that isn't East Blue. So Nami obviously has that alt win con where when you run out of cards in your deck, you win. Let me run through this deck list real quick and give you an introduction of what we're cooking with here. So we're playing for Usopp, he has Rush, and if he lands a hit on leader with a Don attached, trash 7 cards from your deck. That's great. We're playing a bit of spice here, 3 Gaimon. When you deal damage to your opponent's life, you can trash Gaimon, and 3 cards from your deck. This one's a standard one, we're playing for Kaya. Zeph, I know, has been dropped by most Nami lists out there, but we're playing Zeph, so he has that same effect as Usopp if he lands a hit. But on play, if you can return a character with a cost of 3 or less to hand, you can trash 2 cards from the top of your deck, so he has an immediate impact on your deck count. We're playing for Nojiko, who is actually amazing in terms of being a removal piece. She's a 2 cost and she can return a 5 or less character to the opponent's hand. We're playing the OG. For Boodle, he's a blocker and on KO, trash 1 card from the top of your deck. Playing for Belmir, same as Usopp and Zeph. Trash 7 cards if you land a hit. On KO, she lets you trash 3 cards. Our only non-East Blue card is Sogeking, but I do think this guy was designed originally with Nami in mind. So he can return a 6 cost or lower to the opponent's hand on play, and then he can draw 2, trash 2. We're playing for Apis. She's an East Blue searcher, but we only really use her as a 2k. We're playing 3 Hanger. So if you play and then rest Hanger, you can trash a card from hand and draw a card. We're trying out an OP06 card. This was some OP06 explicit East Blue Nami support. Zeph. During your opponent's turn, if your opponent activates a blocker or event, you can trash 4 cards from the top of your deck. Then we've got the standard East Blue events package, 4 Usopp's Rubber Band of Doom, 4 Gum Giant Gavel, and 4 Sanji's Peel-Off. I'm literally just playing this list to have some fun, so let's see if we can actually get some wins with Usopp, Zeph, and co. Game number 1 is Vegapunk, and of all the leaders, Vegapunk is probably the best tech to take on with this Nami strategy, because Vegapunk usually struggles with hand size and is probably going to take life fairly liberally. So this should be a decent match. So on my 3-Don turn, I play out Boodle, who's a blocker, to offer a little bit of defense. They cheat out Atlas. And now on my 5-Don turn, I'm thinking I want to play Zeph, and I want to get his effect off, so I think it's probably worth bouncing Boodle back. And that's exactly what I do. So Zeph's now on the field. Over to the Vegapunk player. They play Lilith to do a bit of a search. They play out the Egghead stage, and then they do a huge swing with Atlas to face. The Egghead stage lets them restand Atlas at the end of turn, but Atlas can't be KO'd if they have less life anyway. So now on my 7-Don turn, I decide, let's play out Boodle again, get that defense back, and let's just load up Zeph and swing. This is the strategy I really wanted to try, and he actually takes it. So I get to trash 7 cards from that Zeph hit, including 2 Usopps in the trash. So I just want to keep that in mind because I am hoping to rip an Usopp off the top of my deck at some point in time. So they cheat out Shaka, they load up Don on Atlas, and they swing at Zeph. What I'm thinking is, I really want to keep Zeph on board if possible. So for hit number 1, I block with Boodle, and for hit number 2, I drop an Usopp's Rubber Band of Doom, and also an Apis, because I've got plenty in hand. So I play Sanji's Peel-Off to get a few more cards, and then Nojiko. Nojiko's a really good little tech option for Nami. She can bounce a, I think, 5 cost or lower back to hand, so I decide, let's send your blocker back to hand and do another big Zeph swing. And they drop a huge amount of cards this time to defend that 9k swing. Unfortunately, they do play out a Yamato to pop our Zeph. And my hand doesn't look amazing here, so I think the Kaya comes out. And we get some better options with Usopp and Zeph, so we can continue the aggro strategy. I think dropping Belmere and Gum Gum Giant Gavel is the best thing here. So I play out Zeph. Just debating whether to bounce back Nojiko or Kaya. I decide Nojiko. Play Nojiko back out and bounce back their Atlas, just so that they can't put too much pressure on me. Now, I think there was a misplay there because, unfortunately, the Vegapunk player passed back immediately, which is a shame. I think it was probably a misclick, and it does somewhat dampen this match, but let's carry on with the strategy anyway. So I end up loading a bunch of Don on Zeph and swinging, which they defend, and then we get the play that I've been wanting to do. We play Rush Usopp out. We load up Don on him. We do an 8k swing. And they defend it. But again, they've only got a few cards in hand now. They defended a big 9k swing from Zeph and a big 8k swing from Usopp. The unfortunate thing is they play out the Rush Ace. They pop Usopp. But then they use Yamato to swing at face rather than Zeph. So that's a little bit dangerous of them to leave Zeph on board. I've got 16 cards in my deck. So I play out Sanji's Pilaf. I then play out Kaya. I don't think the Belmeres are actually going to be useful at all in this match. So I think it's safe to drop both of them, actually. I think what I'm going to do here is play out another Zeph, bounce their Lilith back to hand, so they don't have lethal, they can't finish me off this turn, and I've got 2 Zephs that I can just load up a whole bunch of Don on them to swing at face. Now the unfortunate thing is, they do play out Shaka, so they do have some defense, but I get Sanji's Pilaf off trigger, and we've got another Nojiko in hand. So now we can do the ultimate strategy of playing out Nojiko, bouncing their blocker back to hand, and loading up a huge amount of Don on our 2 Zephs. The first hit is defended, but obviously here they're not going to be able to defend this second huge 12k swing. And that's enough for us to mill through our deck, so aggro Nami won. Now the second match is a really interesting one. We're taking on Nami. So we've got a mirror match, but this Nami is playing the OP07 version of Nami that plays the Kuja Pirates package. So it's a little bit cagey at the start of the game. Nothing's happening for the first couple of turns. They play out Margaret, who's a blocker, which is not great for our strategy. Now I'm actually just going to play against this Nami normally. I'm going to load up my board with swingers. I do a 5k swing with leader first, hoping that they get rid of their blocker. But they don't. No issues though. I'll play Belmere. So I think the strategy here is going to be, we've got another Belmere, we've got a few Usopps in hand. We'll just load up our board with swingers and then swing for the fences. I'm just debating whether to do another leader swing because I really want them to pop that blocker. They don't. They play some defensive events, so the blocker is still there, which is rather annoying. So I play a second Belmere out and pass turn. Now, They really block her up. They've now got 3 Margarets on field, but if I'm being completely honest, this is almost a blessing in disguise for me, because them getting the blockers out early means that I don't have to worry about them as the game drags on later. So I'm going to just try my absolute hardest to get rid of the blockers here. I start with a leader swing which they defend, and the great thing is now they used most of their Don that turn, on their previous turn, to play out 2 Margarets, so they don't really have any Don now for defense. So we can just slowly but surely chip away at their Margarets. We swing 6 with Bellemere, they drop a Margaret. Another 6 with Bellemere, they drop a Margaret. And now, the big surprise, 6 with Rush Usopp. And they drop their final Margaret on field. So we're in a decent position here. Now they play out their 4th and final Margaret, which, like I said, I think this is actually a good thing for us, because it means that we don't have to worry about Margaret going forward. Now they do a 5k swing at Bellemere, but I'm going to defend everything on my field here with as much counter as is necessary. Now they do have a lot of Don up here, so sometimes it's a bit of a numbers game with Nami, trying to decide what are the best numbers to swing with. I start with a 7k swing from Usopp. So they play Snake Dance, which is a bit annoying because it means they can bring Kaya back into hand. Of course, we're milling through cards as they're defending. I do a 5k swing with Leader, and they actually take the life, which I think is a good decision, because they can then use their blocker and the final Don they've left up to defend against these 2 swings. So I swing 6 with Bellemere. They use their final Don to defend against that. They play Gum Gum Giant Gavel. I do 1 more 6 with Bellemere and pop their final blocker. And then here we go, baby. 7 with Usopp, and they take. So I get to do my first milling of 7 cards, and we've got a full board of swingers here. Now they do only have 18 cards left, and it's pretty scary. They've played 2 Sanji's Pilaf and a Kaya in the space of 1 turn, and a second Kaya. They're really getting through cards. They've only got 14 left. I've got 28. I've got double the amount of cards, which on paper isn't great. But I think the problem with them playing so much and using so much Don is I'm not sure how many of these attacks they're going to be able to defend now. So they're really in trouble this turn. If I hit with all of my characters, I'd win the game. So that's what I'm hoping for here. They do a swing at Usopp, but obviously I'm going to defend that. And here we go. So I decide just for a little bit of extra oomph, I'm going to play Gaimon, and then I'm going to swing with Usopp. And Gaimon lets me trash 3 cards if I land a hit on life. So just a little bit of extra sizzle. Now I do land a hit on life, so I mill 10 cards with that mixture of Usopp's ability to trash 7 and Gaimon's ability to trash 3. So that's a great start. Now unfortunately they do get a trigger in life that bounces one of my Bellemeres back to hand, so I'm not going to be able to go full on this turn and mill through my entire deck, which is a shame. I do another 7 with Usopp. With my second Usopp, I should say. And they actually drop 2 Kayas to defend against that, which Namis don't want to drop Kaya as a 2k counter. That's never an ideal situation. I've got 17 cards left in my deck. They've got 14, so it's really coming down to the wire here. But the fact that they've got at least a couple of Kayas in trash does make me feel better. So I load up 3 Don on Bellemere, do an 8k swing. And what happens? They take the hit. So that's 7 more milled. And this is so close now. I decided with my final Don, let's play out a Kaya. Let's see what we get. Why not? So I definitely want to keep the Sanji's peel off. I want to keep the Usopp just in case. And Hanger is also a good card because he lets me draw 1 when I activate main and rest him. So in a pinch, Hanger's a good card to have. So they play out 2 Gloriosas. So that's 2 cards down. They play out what I think is now their final Sanji's peel off to draw 2 more. And man, this is so close. Okay, so this is it now. I've got 7 cards to mill. So, there's a few different ways to do this. I could go the dangerous way of trying to swing, or I could go the slightly safer way and maybe playing Zeph and Sanji's peel off and passing. It's tough to know what to do because they might potentially mill their deck using defensive events if I just swing for the fences with one of my attackers. So it's a little bit scary here, I have to admit. Seven to 9. What to do? I do apologise for this. There's a lot of thinking time going on in this particular game. So I end up going the slightly safer route here. I play out Sanji's peel off. So I'm down to 5 cards in my deck now. The unfortunate thing is the Don doesn't quite work out because I'm just trying to figure out if I play Zeph and then Kaya and then Mr. Hanger, I've done it. But I decide ultimately I'm going to play dangerously and I'm just going to do a big Usopp swing. A little bit scary because they start using their defensive events. I'm watching their card count like an absolute hawk. So they do defend against that hit. But they didn't really do much milling. They're down to 8 cards, and this was kind of a giveaway to me that they've not got anything else to do. They do a huge 13k swing at one of my Usopps, and at this stage in time, why not let it go? Because now I can win the game without any more combat. But I got 4 cards, so I can play out Kaya. I got 2 cards. Play out Mr. Hanger. Play out second Mr. Hanger. And would you believe it, Mr. Hanger has won the game for us. Now, next game is against Dragon. So this is going to be a tricky one because Dragon is a full no-nonsense aggro deck. So on my 3-Don turn here, I do the classic move of playing Boodle. I definitely want to see as many Boodles as possible against this match just to keep us afloat. So with Dragon here, they're doing a bit of a weenie strategy. They've played 3 bodies on board, and all of these bodies kind of have some element of like Don manipulation where they can pass about attached Don. So they do 2 5k swings at me on their 4-Don turn, and I am able to defend both of them. Now I'm going to try and clear their board as much as possible, so I swing 5 at one of their Luffys, and then play out Zeph to bounce one of these 2 weenies back to hand, just to take the pressure off a little bit. So they're really filling up board here. They play out Ivankov, and they play out Sanji, and they don't swing at me. which is, I guess, kind of an interesting strategy because against a normal Nami deck, you know, it's fair enough to build up a board. So I decide maybe now's an opportunity to try and get that first Zeph hit off. So I load up Zeph, swing for 9k, he lets me have it, so I mill 7 and then play Sanji's peel off and pass. So we're off to an okay start, but I have to admit, against a deck like Dragon, you know, we can't really out-aggro this deck, so it feels like only a matter of time before some massive swings are going to start coming our way. Now they end up playing Ivankov, the other Ivankov, and they cheat out Inazuma, who has Banish. Kind of feel like I want to get rid of that Inazuma as soon as possible. So they do a 7k swing at us with Dragon, and I decide to defend against that with Usopp's Rubber Band and dropping the newer version of Zeph. But they keep chipping away at me. They do a 5k swing with Luffy, which I take. Then they go for a 7k swing with Sanji, which this one took me by surprise actually. They've even taken a life to get that effect off. I do get a Usopp's Rubber Band trigger in life, which is a nice treat. But this pressure is kind of getting a bit immense because they do another 7k swing, this time with Ivankov, and I have to drop 3 cards to defend against that. So this is really a bit of a weakness with this old school Nami deck, that there's so many strategies that just completely destroy it. Removal, obviously, but even aggro. It's so easy to out-aggro this variant of the deck. I debate here about, on the one side, maybe clearing the board, or on the other, just going ham at life and trying to mill as fast as possible. I decide the safest strategy is to clear board. So my leader did get rid of Sanji, but Zeph unfortunately didn't get rid of Ivankov. I play out Nojiko and a second Zeph to bounce 2 of their characters back to hand, again, just to take that pressure off. So we're kind of playing like a bounce version of Nami here. But this is where things get really scary. They play out the Rush Monkey D Dragon card. They load up their leader with 2 Don and swing at Zeph, and I have to let him go. Simply not got the defensive cards at the moment to save him. They give 2 Don to Ivankov, who can cheat out a character. So they're really using their Don as efficiently as possible here. They swing 7 with that Ivankov, and unfortunately I have to take the hit. They swing 7 again. Maybe against my better judgment, I take the hit. Do get a Sanji's peel off trigger. And then they swing 9 with Dragon. So I'm in a bit of a sticky situation here. Got 15 cards left in deck. And that's a really awkward number because I've got Rush Usopp in hand. And what would be ideal is if I could land... If I had 14 cards left, I could land a hit with Zeph, and I could land a hit with Usopp, and maybe do something else. So ultimately, I do land a hit with Zeph. I've got 8 cards left in deck. Now, if I can land this hit with Usopp and then use Gum Gum Giant Gavel defensively, I win the game. Unfortunately, though, they've got enough counter to defend against that Rush Usopp hit. And the game now is, well, there's no way of winning, so I concede. So final game is against Rob Lucci. On paper, the East Blue version of Nami that I'm running has virtually no chance of winning this matchup, but I'm always willing to give it a go. So they go first and play Spandam. It's a fairly standard turn 1 maneuver. They do trash an Ennis Lobby, which is nice. I play Boodle out on turn 1 and pass. Their 3-Don turn. They actually load up Spandam with Don before they even swing with leaders, so they kind of signal exactly what they're going to do, which is never a good idea. So they swing 5 with leader, and I drop Boodle, and then they swing 5 with Spandam. I decide to drop Soga King to defend against that hit. Now I decide I'm going to ignore the Spandam here. I'm going to play out Gaimon, and I'm going to swing 7 with Nami. I'm just going to try and get an initial hit, and if this lands, I get to mill 1 with Nami and 3 with Gaimon, so it's a half-decent start. And I felt kind of comfortable doing that because they haven't started building a board yet. They've not got Enos Lobby yet, so you know, it's kind of a good time for me to do something like that. So 5-Don turn for Lucci. They swing with leader. I take the hit and I get Usopp's rubber band off trigger, which is quite a nice treat. So they play out the 5-cost Sabo blocker, which is both good and bad for us. It's good because they're not putting too much pressure on us offensively, but it's bad because we're not going to be able to land a hit very easily. Now, I try and bait them into blocking with Sabo by doing a leader swing. They don't take the bait, though. So I decide to hold off on playing any rush Usopps and just use a Sanji's Peel-Off instead. And a Kaya. So this is more of a conventional Nami turn using Sanji's Peel-Off and Kaya. I decide that in this matchup, you know, I've got 1 Rush Usopp, that's fine. Hanger, I'm not convinced against a black deck that Hanger's going to be that useful. I definitely want to keep Nojiko, and I definitely want to keep Rush Usopp in hand, because that could be the combination to play out next turn, depending on what they do here. So 7-Don turn for Rob Lucci. So give their leader a Don, or 2 Don rather. Three Don, and do 8k at me. And I decide this is a convenient hit to defend against. We can use Usopp's rubber band, and we can drop one of our Apis. And 4 Don, I'm thinking, what's going to come down? And it's a Brook. So they've got their first removal piece on the board. So I'm thinking, to be honest with you, the aggro approach is probably the best to go for here. Let's get milling. So I play Nojiko, bounce Sabo back to hand, play Rush Usopp, and guess what? Have you guessed? They, well, they tried to counter out with Suru. They counter out with Suru and Brook. So unfortunately, our Usopp ploy didn't quite work. Now, I have to say, and I'm not being super derogatory here, but I'm playing unranked, and this turn from Lucci ended up being a bit of a mess. I'm sat here thinking they're going to play out Gecko Moria. I'm in huge trouble here. Usopp is definitely going. What they end up doing is swinging 6 at face, which I actually take and get a Sanji's Peel-Off off trigger. Not too bad. Now they do reduce Usopp to a 3-cost. So again, I'm assuming that Usopp is definitely leaving the board here, and I don't really have I mean, I've got Belmere in hand. So Spandine comes out. And Spandine cheats out Rob Lucci from Trash. Now, the unfortunate thing for them is that Usopp at this point in time is a 3 cost, so he can't be popped by Rob Lucci. What would have been a better play for them is swinging with Brook first to reduce Usopp by 1 cost. Now, I think maybe in a sheer state of panic, they end up loading this Brook up with a whole bunch of Don. So I'm thinking, okay, they kind of misplayed quite heavily and didn't pop the Usopp. They're going to do a big swing at him, but they just don't. So I get off scot-free. So, well, I think it's time to kind of punish them for that misplay. Because to be fair, that was a bit of a mess of a turn by Lucci, and obviously I got tremendously lucky that happened. So I load up a bunch of Dawn on Usopp and swing for the fences. 9k swing at leader. So this is a win-win for us. They either dump a whole bunch of cards from hand or they take this hit, and they do take this hit. So I'm down to 14 cards in my deck. I think, okay, this Rob Lucci hasn't... so I think, okay, we'll be defensive here. We'll play out 2 Boodles, and then I'll just do a swing at Rob Lucci, the 4-drop character, and get a card, get a 2k out of hand. And pass. Now, the thing about Boodle in this game is that obviously he can be popped tremendously easily, particularly if they've got another Rob Lucci in hand, but at the very minimum, if they do pop both of these Boodles at the same time, I can at least mill 2 cards, so I go down to 12 cards. So it's not the worst thing in the world if that happens. The fact that I've got 3 life, though, and 12 cards in deck, is making me feel like I'm gonna be okay in this game. So I'm just checking my trash here, particularly checking for Usopps, because getting another Usopp would be ideal. I've got 2 Usopps in trash. So what they do is swing 5 at leader and reduce the cost of Usopp by 1. I use Boodle to defend that initial swing. So they're actually gonna give some Don to Brook, and they're gonna do the proper Brook play here. So they swing 5 at face, and they do reduce the cost of Usopp down to a 2 cost. So I assume that Usopp is gonna get popped here. I decide to defend with Boodle nonetheless. $12 cards. And I do apologize that the game, when you're playing with Nami, you know, you're constantly checking how many cards you've got left in your deck and stuff like that. So what they end up doing is they play Kaku out, who usually is just a 2k in hand for Lucci. And then they play out Rebecca. So they bring out Spandine from trash. And you would assume here that Rob Lucci is going to make an appearance and pop our Usopp. But that doesn't happen. I've no idea what happened on that turn. I don't understand what's happening here, but we get off scot-free. So I think the only thing we can realistically do here is swing with this Usopp and play out the second Usopp. I can't believe at this stage that they've not got rid of this Usopp. This Usopp is like... he's got some serious plot armor because he just refuses to die. He's just not... I don't know what's going on here. So I play Nojiko. I bounce our Rebecca back to hand. I load up 2 Don on Usopp, and I actually land a hit on them. So that's 7 more cards out of my deck. I've only got 4 cards left now. So we could go the dangerous route and play out our second rush Usopp, or we could use Sanji's peel off and see what happens. Now I do end up deciding I'll swing up the Brook with my leader first, because at best we get rid of a body, at worst we get rid of a 2k from hand or 2 1ks or something like that. So they get rid of 2 1ks to save Brook, and for me that kind of sealed the deal. I thought to myself, they're down to 4 cards in hand, it's worth a go. I want to win a game with Rush Usopp. It's worth a go, guys. They take the hit, and we've done it. Usopp was the absolute MVP in this match, but I do have to admit, and again, I'm not trying to be too insulting, but I did find a Rob Lucci player that made at least 3 quite large misplays. And there you have it, everybody. East Blue Nami. Final thoughts? Well, there's a reason why nobody plays this package. There's a reason why event-heavy Nami is so popular. The East Blue package just doesn't work. I hate to say it, but if I had to rate this kind of deck and this style of play, competitively, it's a 1-star deck. Because it's just really, really difficult to get a win, and every win that you saw in this video was probably accompanied with like half a dozen losses. One thing I will say though is that getting a win with an Usopp, for example, is just about the most satisfying way to win a game. Genuinely is amazing. But yeah, this is a lot of fun to play. If you can play it with a buddy, then I recommend it. But yeah, if Bandai want Nami players to gravitate towards the East Blue package, it's gonna need a ton of support. Anyway, hope you had fun, because I certainly did with this one. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time.